Chinese markets erasing earlier losses after another volatile session overnight, closing up more than 1% after falling nearly 5% in early trading. There's the Shanghai Composite Index. Despite the late rally in Asia, the recent swings in the Chinese markets continue to weigh on global stock markets, with European markets trading lower this morning, as you can see there. What will the impact be of these all of these volatility happening in China? Joining us right now on the telephone is the editor of the Gloom, Boom and Doom report, Marc Faber. Marc, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So when you look at what's going on in China, what do you think the big impact is on global markets?
Well, first of all, China has a huge impact on the global economy because after 2007, after the crisis, its growth drove growth in other emerging economies until 2011, 2012. And then when the Chinese economy began to slow down and in the last 12 months decelerate very sharply, it knocked off commodity prices, notably industrial commodity prices. And that has, of course, a huge impact on all the emerging economies that produce commodities, such as Brazil, Argentina, Africa, Central Asia, Russia, and Australasia. And it also has a huge impact on these countries' currencies that have, in some cases, imploded.
So
yes,
what you're
it
saying
has
is
a huge impact.
We've already seen a big impact, I guess, then, from what's happening in China. The last time we spoke, you were pretty negative on global markets. You were expecting a big sell-off in equities. Are you still as negative?
Yes, I mean, we had a big sell-off in emerging economies. In dollar terms, many emerging markets have tumbled. The U.S. is essentially the last man standing, and I think it will spill over to the U.S. because don't forget, for instance, GM, about 35% of their sales are in China, and close to 50% of their profits come from China. And a friend of mine, he recently told me he owns dealerships for luxury cars in China. He didn't say that car sales have slowed down. He said they have hit a brick wall. And indeed, in July, car sales were down 7%, but more to come.
Wow. Here's David Kotok from Cumberland.
Yeah, Marc, David Kotok, nice to talk with you. Question.
My pleasure.
China cuts its currency. China announces an increase in gold reserves. Have we had a transitional game changer in the currency that's going to affect gold demand, gold prices?
Well, I suppose so, but I'd like to mention the following. First of all, the stock market has tumbled over the last, say, 6 weeks by more than 30%. And many speculators, they couldn't liquidate their shares because they're just not opening anymore. And so it could be that a lot of margin calls had to be met by selling off gold, and that may have contributed to some of the gold weakness. Now, this transition you're talking about, in my view, is very important because we don't know exactly why China began to weaken its currency. It could be because of massive capital outflows. It could also be a warning signal to the world that if the world, notably the U.S., doesn't treat China fairly, and they have some reasons to believe that, certainly from their perspective, that they also can embark on economic and financial warfare. And finally, don't forget, the adjustment is very small against other currencies. Other currencies in Asia have weakened much more. In fact, against the yen, the yuan, the Chinese currency, has doubled in value over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's a very small adjustment.
Look, nearly $1 trillion has exited emerging markets in the past 13 months. Are you expecting a significant sell-off in the U.S.? Marc Faber, what's the answer?
Well, the bank credit analyst said that there will be a bloodbath in emerging economies. We already had one to a large extent if you adjust the poor market performance and the currency weakness. Probably more to come. But I don't believe that the U.S. will not be affected at all. And I would look at valuations. Valuations are now not exactly cheap in emerging markets, but they are becoming reasonable. I think the U.S. will be the last one to fall.
All right, we will leave it there. Marc, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, and all the best to David.
Thanks, Marc.
Marc Faber there, the Gloom, Boom, and Doom Report editor. New